Hello and welcome to another episode of Flower Breeding. In this episode, we'll talk about the flower breeder, Victor Lemoine. This is one of the most interesting plant breeders today because much of his work has been incorporated into many modern cultivars. Mr. Lemoine was born in 1823 and died in 1911. He came from a family of skillful gardeners that worked in large estates. Due to the family's wealth, the young Victor could actually be schooled throughout the entire school year and finish school rather than being taken out early to do family work. Victor also became a gardener, but with more education, he attached himself to three important horticulturists of that era. Amongst his mentors was the gardener for King Louis XIV, Jean-Baptiste Delacroix, who managed the royal gardens of both ornamental and orchard property, even managing greenhouses so that the king could enjoy peaches and melon fresh every day of the year, both in winter and summer. During this time, Mr. Lemoine prepared himself very seriously, working diligently within various nurseries, such as the nursery of E.A. Baumann of Bulwiller, who was a botanist and a master gardener, breeding many varieties of rose and collecting even more. Likewise, Mr. Baumann also had connections to other researchers such as Dr. de Condell, which provide even further knowledge of various plants and artificial cross-pollination technique, all of which was obtained by Mr. Lemoine through Mr. Baumann. The last stop for Mr. Lemoine was the plant hunter Mr. Van Hout. He was also a skilled artist and gardener. On a side note, he also spent some time with a nursery firm called Metallis, a peony breeder and a rose breeder. After learning all he could from these different groups and people, after the apprenticeship was completed, he started his own nursery in the province of Nancy and began crossbreeding different flowers. By 1852, he bred the first double-flowered variety of purslane, a variety originally from Brazil. In 1854, he bred another variety from a different species called Potentilla, a double-flowered form called Gloire de Nancy. Due to his tendency not to record anything, we do not know what the species he used was, but thanks to these two successes, by 1855 he obtained more land and was able to hybridize and breed plants at a very wide scale. During this time, Mr. Lemoine married Marie-Louise Gaumont, who lived from 1834 to 1905, and within 4 years had 3 children. His youngest son, Emile, who lived from 1862 to 1942, had much of the same qualities that made his father the kind of guy he was. Emile's 2 older sisters never married or had children, but Emile married one of his cousins on his mom's side, giving rise to Mr. Lemoine's grandson Henry Lemoine, who likewise was also an important plant breeder. Marie-Louise also played a role in the plant breeding process as well. After being taught by her husband, she began breeding stuff for herself as well. The family owned this firm until it was closed in 1968, following which Henry Lemoine died in 1982, as they were unable to adapt to the new circumstances following World War I and World War II. Victor Lemoine bred many different flowers up until the 1890s, when he began to slow down a little bit. It was Emile who picked up afterwards and began trying to breed new varieties of lilac. Both Victor and Emile Lemoine bred many different types of lilac, although the majority of the lilac work seems to have been done by Emile, as well as Marie-Louise Lemoine as well. But regardless of who bred what, 214 cultivars of lilac in total were bred by the Lemoine family, with almost all of them being viable for commercial production. One such cultivar that was often grown is Azure plena, a hybrid derived purely from Syringa vulgaris, the common lilac. Other hybrids were made by crossbreeding Syringa oblata with Syringa vulgaris. By the time that the year 1900 came around, Victor Lemoine was 78, and another 64 varieties of lilac were bred. These were the French hybrids, which were the foundation stock for all modern lilac breeding that has double-flowered petals. Prior to that, 67 were released in 1876 to 1900. Emile and his son Henry likewise bred 62 cultivars, TLDR, Between 1878 and 1900, 67 lilac cultivars were bred by Victor Lemoine. Another 64 were bred between 1900 and 1911, and another 62 were bred between 1912 and 1933 by Emile and his son Henry. During this time period, other cultivars were also bred. 2 Pelargonium cultivars were bred, which are a type of geranium, one of which won a prize in 1877. Likewise, Victor Lemoine also began breeding with a new variety of begonia at that time called Begonia bulvariensis, alongside 2 other species that came afterwards, and a 4th species afterwards. These 4 species became the basic building blocks for Lemoine's begonia work. Lemoine improved his breeding work. Mr. Lemoine also began breeding gladiolus species, crossbreeding foundation stock bred by others, with a newly discovered species called Gladiolus purpurea artorius. Now it's said from these crossbreeds that almost 400 new cultivars were bred. And that about covers everything. Thank you for watching.